Cold water splashed across Margaret and little Lily, the shock stealing their breath as the bucket tipped violently overhead. Lily's small hands clutched her grandmother's skirt, trembling, her wide eyes fixed on the woman standing above them. Victoria, dressed in silk green that shimmered under the morning sun, smirked as the filthy water dripped from their faces to the marble stones below. The heavy iron gates groaned open just then, and the low growl of a sleek black car filled the driveway. Nathaniel Carter, the man whose empire stretched across industries and continents, stepped out with a confident ease, only to freeze at the sight before him. His polished shoes halted mid-step, his chest tightening as disbelief washed over him. For a long second, the world seemed to stop, leaving him staring at his fiancée, the woman he thought he would marry, as she towered in cruelty over his mother and daughter. Victoria's smug expression faltered when she saw Nathaniel standing there, his sharp eyes locked on her. She had built her life around appearances, poise, charm, a dazzling smile that could light up any room. But in that instant, the mask slipped, revealing something darker, something Nathaniel had refused to acknowledge until it struck him like a thunderbolt. He had returned home unannounced, after weeks of business trips and endless meetings. All he had wanted was a quiet morning with the two people who meant the world to him. His mother Margaret, the woman who raised him after his father's passing, and Lily, his 7-year-old daughter, the little girl who was his anchor after losing his wife far too soon. They were his heart, his compass in a world obsessed with wealth and power. Margaret had endured Victoria's sharp tongue before, the clipped comments about her age, her simplicity, her refusal to mold herself into the image of a high-society matriarch. She had bitten her words, never wanting to burden Nathaniel with doubts about the woman he chose. But she never imagined Victoria's cruelty would spill over to Lily, innocent and bright, whose laughter had been echoing in the courtyard just minutes earlier. That morning, Lily had been picking wildflowers by the fountain, her giggles filling the air. Margaret had been watching, her smile soft, when Victoria appeared in her jeweled gown. Her voice, sharp as glass, cut through the moment, scolding Margaret for letting Lily run wild and daring to lower the image of the Carter estate. Margaret, patient and gracious, had tried to steer Lily away with a gentle hand. But Victoria, her anger simmering just beneath the elegance, decided humiliation was better than patience. Without a word of warning, she lifted the bucket of murky water meant for cleaning and doused them both. The splash echoed like a slap across the courtyard. And that was the moment Nathaniel arrived, when every illusion he had about Victoria shattered. He could no longer see her as the charming fiancée who turned heads at galas. All he saw was the woman standing with dripping malice in the home where kindness and love had always ruled. His mother's wet clothes clung to her frail frame, her hands shielding Lily's tiny shoulders. The little girl's sobs broke the silence, and Nathaniel's chest tightened as rage sparked deep inside him. For a man who had conquered boardrooms and silenced rivals with strategy, no battle had ever felt as personal as the one that now stood before him. Between the family he cherished and the woman he almost let destroy them. Lily screamed, her tiny arms wrapping desperately around her grandmother's waist as Margaret tried to shield her with trembling hands. The filthy water soaked through their clothes, dripping from their hair, seeping into the cracks of the stone courtyard. Victoria's lips curved into a satisfied smirk, her voice low and venomous. "Exactly where you belong," she muttered, certain no one important would ever know. But Nathaniel had seen everything. His chest constricted, his breath caught, and for a moment, he couldn't move. The woman he had once defended, admired, and imagined standing by his daughter's side had just revealed a cruelty so sharp it cut through every illusion he had ever held. Dreams of a perfect family with Victoria shattered in an instant, crashing around him like glass dropped on marble. Slowly, he advanced, the sound of his shoes echoing against the driveway. Victoria turned, startled, her confidence dissolving the second her eyes met his. Her smirk vanished. The color drained from her face. Nathaniel didn't speak at first. His silence was heavier than anger, louder than shouting. His gaze, filled with betrayal, burned into her until she trembled. Victoria stumbled over words, reaching for excuses that rang hollow. She blamed Margaret for being in the way, Lily for being unruly, anything that might twist the truth. But Nathaniel's sharp mind had closed the case in a heartbeat. Lies could never cover what he had seen with his own eyes. He dropped to one knee beside his mother and daughter, unbothered by the expensive suit soaking against the wet stones. He wrapped his arms around them, pulling them close. Lily buried her face into his chest, sobbing, whispering that she was scared. Margaret, her voice trembling but steady, tried to reassure him. "Don't worry about me, Nathaniel. I'll be fine." But he knew better. This wasn't about water. It was about dignity. It was about respect. It was about the very core of love and trust. And Victoria had trampled all of it. The engagement ended that day. There were no long arguments, no raised voices, no bargaining. Nathaniel simply stood tall, met Victoria's desperate gaze, and told her to leave. Her tears fell quickly, her pleas cracked with panic, but his decision did not waver. In that courtyard, under the bright morning sun, Nathaniel realized that no beauty, no wealth, and no social standing could outweigh the simple truth of character. The story of the broken engagement rippled quickly through high society. Whispers spread, the gossip columns buzzed with speculation, but Nathaniel didn't care. He closed his doors to the noise and focused instead on what mattered. The days that followed were filled with the warmth he thought he had lost to his career. He planned picnics in the garden for Lily, filling her afternoons with laughter and games to chase away the shadows of that awful morning. At night, he tucked her into bed himself, telling stories he had missed during months of travel. With Margaret, he lingered over cups of tea, listening to her wisdom, grateful for the quiet strength that had guided him since childhood. The memory of Victoria's cruelty still lingered, but it no longer defined the home. Slowly, peace returned, and love filled the spaces anger had tried to steal. Nathaniel learned a truth he would never forget, that real love isn't proven by charm or appearances, but by kindness shown to the most vulnerable. Victoria had failed that test in the cruelest way, but Margaret and Lily reminded him that the greatest wealth a man could ever have wasn't measured in dollars or diamonds. It was measured in the bonds that held his family together, in compassion that couldn't be bought, and in the courage it took to walk away from someone who had none. Sometimes, it takes standing face to face with cruelty to finally understand the priceless value of kindness, and to choose it, no matter the cost.